Hi, I'm Sana from Ready and Thriving, and it's a celebratory day, and I want to make a really great dessert to kind of top off the day. And it's a recipe adapted to be like the restaurant, the Cheesecake Factory, had a particular cheesecake that was so amazing called Jack Daniel's Upside Down Double Chocolate Cheesecake. So good. And this is my adaptation that has that wonderful chocolate cheesecake at the bottom. It's got brownie on top, so that's like the upside down factor because it's almost like you've got the crust but on the top. But it's also fantastic for cooking because the cheesecake takes longer, and then we'll just pile the brownie on top. It's really cool. Nice hack. And then ganache on the outside, just because you need more chocolate. So to me, that's really triple chocolate actually, and you do use 3 different types of chocolate in it. It's amazing. So this is what I'll make. This is Jack Daniel's in the original version from Cheesecake Factory. I don't happen to have that. I do have Jameson's whiskey, which I will be using instead. But even if you don't use whiskey, totally fine too, because it's really about rounding out that flavor of the chocolate, and that's what that's to do. So if you would like a version that is really almost like a death by chocolate type of version, then make it without any additional flavors. If you do want to round out the flavors, you could also think about almond would be very nice enhancement. So use extract instead of where I show to say whiskey. And then get creative with it. What else could you make? Chocolate orange is amazing. So you could use either an orange extract, or if you don't mind the whiskey, Grand Marnier. That would be amazing. That would be so good. And also, if you want to make kind of like a nice wintry version, cool version, think about peppermint or something like that. And of course, a good classic, vanilla, right? Vanilla extract instead. So just take a look, whatever you like there for your favorite flavor. I will be using whiskey because it does add a nice kind of richness and age and woodiness to it. So it makes it a little bit less of the death by chocolate and just a little bit more rich and succulent and delicious. So let's get started. Okay, so to get started, I like to follow the kitchen practice of mise en place, and that's basically put everything in its place. It just makes it so much nicer when you got everything at hand and you can just cook freely, and it feels so great. So let's just get out the ingredients. So here's my baking pantry. We will need sugar. Okay, I've got everything here that I need for the cheesecake part, and the actual cream cheese, I want it to come to room temperature. So I'm just gonna let this sit for a little bit. Everything we need for the cheesecake. Also have everything ready in a little separate area for the brownie part. So again, wanna make sure to get that butter to room temperature so that it creams so nicely. I like to use a hand mixer for that bit because I'll already have used the stand mixer for the cheesecake part. It is ideal to use a stand mixer for the cheesecake if you can, because you really want to whip that cream cheese together with the sugar to really dissolve the sugar well and to make it super creamy. Use the mixing element for that. We will need a springform pan too. It's really the best and easiest way, and that is because then we can just spring this out. It lifts off very nicely, and we get a beautiful cheesecake that's not marred at all on out. But we will then be using our third type of chocolate, so we'll be using some milk chocolate. We'll also use a little bit of light corn syrup as well, and then for the ganache to spread it nicely, to have some sort of spatula for spreading or a knife of some sort. Cream cheese is at room temperature, so now let's get started. I've got 1 cup, dry ingredient cup of chocolate chips, and they're the semi-sweet chocolate chips. Then I've got 1/3 of a cup of milk. And as you can see, this is the dry ingredient and this is the wet ingredient type of measuring cup. So use those if you're here in America, or use the conversion to do the scale, which will make sure that it's completely accurate. Okay, we put this in the microwave, 100%. We're gonna cook it about 1.5 minutes, but do just that first 1 minute and then probably 15-second intervals, just to make sure I'm not going to burn it at all. I'm over here, I will preheat the oven. We want it nice and hot. Oven is preheated to 400 degrees Fahrenheit, 200 degrees Celsius. So while that's heating up, we're going to be mixing together the cream cheese and sugar. Really important to get that going because that does take a long time. So I put the 3 containers of cream cheese in, and I want to put in 1, again using dry ingredient, cup level of sugar. Right on in there. And then we'll cream that together. And we'll want to use a really good mixing paddle. If you have one that already scrapes the sides, even better. We'll get this going and we will let it run for like a whole 5 minutes. And that's with a real super hardy mixer. If you were going to do it with a hand mixer, then go really for like 10 minutes. So let's get that going. We'll start slow at first. Just let it get incorporated and then we'll really let it go to town. Okay, that's blending really nicely. I just am stopping it midway just to do one good scrape of the bowl, just to make sure that all that sugar is in there, and then I'll let it run the rest of the time. While I'm here, I'm gonna check on that chocolate. Now I had put it in first for that 1 minute. I'm glad that I did it that way, because when it came out, I stirred it around and saw that actually most of the chips were already melted. And that's exactly what you want, is the milk to get hot and let those chips melt in that hot milk. So I just put it in for another 10 seconds because there were some still kind of solid parts. But really now, I'm again mixing it myself and I can see it's melting into a really nice kind of thin chocolatey mixture, because I'll be pouring that in there, and basically all you want is for it to be nicely combined. Now if you were to leave it in the microwave and try to have the microwave do all the melting for you, you really risk burning the chocolate, and that's no good. So now let's finish this blending up, and then we'll start adding the flavors. Wow, that's whipped up so nicely. It's so well blended. I just want to put a little bit between my fingers and just make sure I don't feel any sugar in there. I don't. So now let's add in the 4 eggs. Ready to go now. And we'll just pull those up and blend them in until they're fully incorporated. Okay, those are well incorporated. What it should look like now is really completely homogeneous, but also nice and smooth looking. Just really, really nice and glossy as well. So putting in the flavors, we have our now melted chocolate and milk mixture. Delicious. And then put in your flavoring. So 2 tablespoons gives a nice flavor from whiskey. Would be very similar for an extract, though maybe 1 tablespoon would be enough. Okay, before we finish, give it a full scrape down to get all of those ingredients fully mixed through, and then we'll do one last bit of a mix. And we've got our cheesecake mixture ready to go. Excellent, so now that's ready. And we are ready. So I want to take this springform pan and just butter it up. Make sure it's nicely buttered. Okay, so now we've got our wonderful chocolate cheesecake mixture. We pour it into the buttered springform pan. And it will come out nice and pour out mostly. But it is still a little bit sticky. You know, it's got that nice cream cheese and eggs. So scrape that bowl down, get all of it out, and spoon it in. Make sure it's nice and lays flat within your spring pan. And that'll probably just happen naturally but if you do end up needing to spread it a little bit to keep it flat, that's great. So now we've got our cheesecake ready to go into the oven. So remember, preheated already at 400 degrees, nice and hot. And we are going to put that in for 15 minutes only at 400. Then we're going to turn that down to 350. The reason we do that is at 400 degrees, this will souffle up a bit and start to set. And if we kept cooking it that way though, it would be a little bit too intense. The rest of the time, we will be cooking at 350 degrees. So it'll be low and slow and just really bake it into place. So a total of 30 minutes. So during that time, we can make the brownie mix, which we will pour onto it directly as we pull it out of the oven, and then we put it back in the oven to cook thoroughly. So let's get started with the brownie mix. We're gonna do like we did before with melting the chocolate into the microwave. This time we're using baker's chocolate. So this has no sugar in, and we're using about half a bar there, which is 2 ounces. We will want to go ahead and break it up a bit, and we'll combine this with butter, and then we'll put that into the microwave again for that first 1 minute, and we'll see how it's doing in terms of its meltiness. I'm using a bowl that's far too large just for this task, and the reason is I will use this particular bowl for the entire mixing process. So we'll go ahead and put this in for 1 minute. Chocolatey and combined, but I still see big chunks. But let's see once we mix it how that does. It looks like the chunks will break down actually as I go, and that is really the way that I prefer it. Again, if we just put it in there until it was fully smooth, you also would probably have little burnt patches, and it's fully dissolved and really silky smooth now. It is still a little bit hot, so I'm going to let that cool a little bit because I'm going to add eggs. We don't want them to just cook right there in the chocolate. Now this is a temperature I can confidently grab the bowl. It's not going to be too hot for those eggs. Now we'll just add the other key ingredients. So we will add sugar in now, 1 teaspoon of vanilla, then we'll put in the 2 eggs. Then we'll mix this up really nicely. At this stage, we can afford to go ahead and really blend it up, make it nice and combined fully. So before I go, I can hear now the timer going off. So what that means is that we now need to turn that oven down. So it's been cooking for 15 minutes at 400 degrees Fahrenheit. We will now clear that and start at 350. Good. So now we'll do 350 again for another 15 minutes. And then at that stage, we'll take it out and we'll put this brownie mixture on the top of it. We'll put it back in at that same 350 degrees. So the rest of the bake will be low and slow and at 350. So now we can continue. I've got all the other ingredients in there except for the flour. We don't want to put that in yet because flour, of course, has the gluten strands, and at this point we just want to whip it up really nicely, and feel free to do so without potentially making chocolate bread. Leaving a nice trail now, so I know it's nice and combined and starting to come together. So we can get that out, and now we'll add that ½ cup of flour. Now this part, we don't want to over-mix it. Over-mixing it at this stage will mean that we get something that's a lot more bread-like and not so fudgy and delicious. So we just want to low and slow. You could even just use a wooden spoon or what have you to combine. I will, since this is out, use this, but really sparingly on the lowest possible setting, just until I see it's combined. Look at that. I think that's done. Boom. Don't want to overdo it at all. Done. So now we have the brownie mixture ready, and when that goes off at 15 more minutes, then we'll put this carefully on the top. Okay. Great, so that's 30 minutes now in the oven. Take it out gently because it's souffled up and it'll still be really quite soft. So do it very gently, and of course it's coming out of the oven, so also very carefully. Wow, that has souffled up so nicely. It's almost all the way to the top. Just closing that to keep the heat in. Now, this will collapse a bit as you now put the brownie on top, so don't panic. However, you do want to minimize as much as possible how much that happens. The best technique to be able to do that is to start from around the edges, right? So brownie batter is quite thick, so we just want to pour that really carefully, or spoon it carefully around the edges first. I'll keep it nice and gentle, and also will stop it from potentially just collapsing into this still very tender and wet cheesecake. Just there, first of all, around that edge, and then we'll just gently spread it so that it's flat across the top. So it's been 35 minutes, and now we're going to check to see if it's ready. It looks gorgeous. We've got a really great looking brownie top, but let's just make sure it's done. Take a toothpick, and let's poke that first in the center. Good break at the top, so that's excellent. I'm gonna go all the way in because I want to get not only the brownie, but also that cheesecake. So that's really clear, looks great. Perfect, it's ready. So we'll just turn off that oven, and then we'll let it cool. So we want it to cool completely before we cover this in chocolate ganache. So first I'll let it sit out and just kind of come a little bit warmer than room temperature. Then I'll put it in the refrigerator to let it cool all the way down. So while this cools on the counter, just going to make that ganache really quickly. So we need a cup and a half of now milk chocolate. So this is our third type of chocolate now. And these bags tend to be about 2 cups, so you'll have a little bit left over, but not much. And a bit of cream. And then we'll do that same technique that we have been of using the microwave to be able to just melt this. So we'll put it in for that 1 minute to start. It looks like all of those chips will melt again, so I'll just combine those nicely, and we'll just hand stir those together. And then we'll flavor it, and that's our ganache then ready. Then what we will do is to put both of these into the refrigerator and let them cool down. We want the ganache to cool down to a nice spreading temperature, and then it can sit at room temperature until you're ready to use it. But you really want to get that cheesecake to set really well. Now you may see it is starting to reduce in size, and that's quite normal, so don't panic. It will become a little bit denser and lose that full souffle that it gained when it was hot. That, as you know, cheesecakes are nice and dense, so that's part of the process as well. So don't worry, don't panic. Got that nicely combined. So now we just have 2 tablespoons of corn syrup and 2 tablespoons of, again, the flavoring. So in this case, the Jameson's whiskey. A little extra splash there, I think that'll be fine. Okay, great, so everything's in. And now we just want to mix that together really nice and combined. And this will become our, basically kind of like our frosting on top. So as if the brownie and the cheesecake were not enough chocolate, we will also cover it in a nice flavored chocolate as well. So get that really thoroughly combined well while it's really nice and glossy and thin. And then we will put that into the refrigerator, and it will get a little bit stiffer. So get dinner on the stove. So now it's time, let's finish up the double chocolate cheesecake. I've just pulled this out of the refrigerator. I got myself a baking sheet. Because I'm going to be pouring chocolate over, I want to catch that chocolate and not make a gigantic mess. I'm glad I did that because what we've got is a little bit of brownie sticking and that would have made it difficult to undo. So let's just pull this off now and see how it's turned out. Beautiful, it came right off and no issues with it seeping out. It looks beautiful. You can see the chocolate cheesecake layer, the brownie on top, and oh, it smells so good. So now I'm going to just prepare it for the ganache. Ganache goes on nice and shiny and we want it to look really nice and slick. So I'm going to take off a little bit of that top just so it's a bit flatter. I like to use a bread knife. It's really the best thing to cut any type of cake or brownie. So I've just shaved off just the top of the brownie bits. Definitely saving those because those will be a treat later. But now we've got a flatter surface. Doesn't have to be perfect, but to put our ganache. So this was in the refrigerator for a little while and now you can see the consistency. It really makes more of a V shape, leaves a really nice ribbon in the ganache. So you know it's ready. It's not all just going to pour over the ends. So now let's pour it on top of the cheesecake and go around to the edge to make sure that you can get to the edge. It will want to drip down into the center, and so we want to make sure to get it all the way to the edge. And keep it on the top if you can. It's really nice to see the sides. And if it starts to drip down the sides, no problem, then just kind of put a thin layer around on the outside. So now I'm just spreading it nicely to the edge. And stylish these days, sometimes people do drips down the side. So if you'd like to do something special like that, it does look kind of extra tempting when you do that. So I'm going to try to just send a few dips over the side. I had a couple natural ones anyway, so now I'll make some artistic ones. I want to get it to how we want it to look because we'll put it back in the fridge for a short time before serving, and then we'll have some dinner and then it'll be ready to eat. So I'm just going to make sure this is nice and flat and glossy on top. Just make it look that extra bit tempting. It should be really shiny and beautiful. So not much dripped down, but it was nice to have that safety. And now we've got a nice glossy covering. I'm going to go ahead and put this directly into the fridge now and let it cool and harden just like this, and it'll be ready in really no time at all, probably 20 minutes or so. Gosh, that is perfect. Time for dinner. So I will put this in the fridge and we will be ready to eat. I hope you enjoy it, and please like this video. Ooh, and now it's time to enjoy this. Actually, I've been enjoying it much of the day as it just filled the entire house with this amazing aroma of chocolate. And now I get to taste. Looks so beautiful, all those nice layers of cheesecake, brownie, and then ganache on the top. Ooh, nice and tender. Mmm, oh my gosh. Mmm, oh my gosh, so rich. So very, very soft, nice cheesecake. A little bit of a nice crunch there with the brownie, and then the absolute richness of the ganache. Delivers on so many layers. For more great recipes that you can make directly from your pantry, go to readyandthriving.com and subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see more sweet treats. Enjoy!